what makes you laugh the most in this world?
Oh, it's a great question. I
Mm.
thought it was going to be a music question, so it's completely thrown me a little bit. Um, what makes me laugh most in this world? Uh, my girlfriend Kayla makes me laugh quite a lot. Um, and if we're talking just general, probably just like I'm a very big fan of like Seinfeld and like Curb Your Enthusiasm. I love that kind of like observational, over the top humor. So and all my friends are the same. So I guess like because I've grown up with them since primary school at this point. I've had my friends since I was like 5 years old, and I'm 23 now. So it's just all these little like inside jokes of just stuff that no one else would understand that are completely just over exaggerated. But yeah,
I've never seen Seinfeld. That's one of my I feel like I
really,
need
that's
to.
crazy. Not even like I'm sure you've seen bits and pieces, but like I'd highly recommend it. I think it's timeless.
Yeah, I do think I need to. I've been rewatching some Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That cracks me up.
See, if you'd like It's Always Sunny, I think you'd like Seinfeld. And I think you see the similarities.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Always Sunny is it's so funny, but I feel like once you know the jokes are coming, I don't know if it's as funny. Like I'm kind of
Right.
rewatching it, and it's a bit like it's become a bit background noisy. But like the first time you hear some of those scenes and how ridiculous some of them are, like just
Yeah.
I've been in tears watching that show, man. I absolutely love it. I was talking the last guy I was talking to was Gabe from Enterprise Earth.
No, I
Kind of
don't.
like proper heavy band. Very
Oh,
cool.
nice.
But you're talking about like Monty Python and stuff and like British humour versus I do love Monty Python. That is so timeless. I was watching
Yeah.
was it The Holy Grail the other day? I can't remember which. I rewatched it and it's just so like just bit after bit it's just
Is that
like
the one where the guy gets his arms chopped off and he's
yeah,
still asking for it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that one. Yeah. And it just makes me like proud to be British. So yeah,
British humor is elite, to be fair.
I think it used to be. I don't know if it is so good anymore. Although I went to a comedy club, probably been the best part of a year ago now, and it was really funny. I think it's something about being in a room with comedians. It's different to like being just on having it on the TV. I don't know
Yeah,
what it
it
is, but
is.
just even ones that maybe I wouldn't have found as funny. Like just on like a TV show for some reason when they're in the room and everyone's laughing around you and I was at the front row
It's
and
contagious.
yeah,
Yeah, right.
I didn't want front row, but somehow got it and managed to avoid getting roasted even once.
Oh,
Literally
nice.
every other table got like roasted, and I
Just
didn't.
missed
So
it.
yeah, no, I'm glad I did. Yeah. I was on like a first date and it just was like the worst. It would have just been the worst thing because
Could have ended in
they
disaster.
were asking all the couples like how long have you been together. I was like, oh no, I can't
Oh,
do this
no.
because I know
You know it's
I was
coming.
like,
You start sweating.
yeah, I was. Yeah, I can feel it now. Like I was like, I know he's gonna roast the shit out of me if he finds out. But yeah, and he just went around everyone and didn't get to us. I was like, this is good.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, we can, that's a rather non-musical question. So if you want, we can direct it more musically,
Yeah.
because in terms of like your kind of what you've been, I remember you were quite recently put out a video, I think, talking about how kind of modern production has, and you talked about your own experience of it, where sort of this kind of modern style of putting music together, particularly in the metal world. I mean, I'd say particularly, it's in a lot of sort of musical worlds, but there's a lot of perfection around, in terms of
Yeah.
like playing quality, recording quality, mixing everything. And then you're getting sort of almost a reflection of that in artists nowadays. Do you feel like there are sort of pros and cons to that? Because I know, for example, drummers, the most immediate thing I can think is obviously you get these really like metronome style
Yeah.
drummers that are super tight players, but then it begs the question, like, maybe are they lacking a bit of energy or a bit of like, a bit of kind of maybe it's harder to be sort of unique when you feel so gridded like that, do you feel like there's sort of pros and cons to how you've developed as a musician with this kind of music around you?
I mean, personally, I think that the pros outweigh most of the cons, if there were any. Because, as you said, with drums, especially like back in the day, even just 10 years ago, like, you know, drummers that use triggers were like frowned upon, but now drummers who were learning that stuff 10 years ago, who were like doing stuff now, don't need the triggers because they've just been able to learn it and hit that hard every single time. And they are these kind of like machines where it's almost impossible what they're doing. And it's just only going to get better and better. Whether that hurts the creative aspect of music is another question to be asked. I feel like, because on that video that you mentioned, a lot of the comments were more or less just boomers going, oh yeah, they can play, but can they write a song? And then, you know, it's the double-edged sword of like, oh, but like you're still stuck in the 70s, mate. Or like, you know what I mean? Or like, truth be told, maybe some people just, it gets in the way of their creative flow because they're so hyper-focused on perfection that those little imperfections that you might find when you're writing music or writing original music or coming up with an original idea that makes it original doesn't even have room to be there because you're so focused on making it skin tight. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's an interesting one. What do you think?
I feel like it makes it, for me, I feel like it makes it harder to start the process a little bit because you hear such perfect finished articles that when you sit down and just plug your guitar in and start riffing or like I don't know, start humming a melody or whatever, it's so far from sounding like that finished product. Maybe like years and years ago, you know, you could plug your guitar into your amp and it kind of sounds a bit like what you're listening to on the tape deck or whatever because the production quality is not as good and sounds more like you're just in the room with it, you know.
Yeah,
so
that's
like
a great point actually.
Yeah, so like sometimes I'm sat there, I'm trying to write a riff and like I feel maybe a bit uninspired because I'm thinking this doesn't sound as good. Yeah, I'm not consciously thinking this obviously, but like
yeah,
I'm like, I think subconsciously I'm thinking this isn't as good as, you know, the riffs that I listen to and that I love, and ironically even the riffs that I've put together with my own band, you know, and I think it could harm that part, but that's not really a fault of the modern process. I think it's just how it's how it's going to go, and you know, with the way you've got these like amp tones in the out of the box now, you can get a bit closer. But for me, yeah, I feel like it does sort of. You have to get over that process and just kind of just hear the purity of the music, if that makes sense, and just well, is the melody good? Yeah, even if I played it on like a little xylophone, would it be a good melody, kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great point actually. I think like it's interesting you bring that up because I think I've definitely thought that, but I just haven't put it into words. But I think these days, I think like what separates like really, really, really just like, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Just musicians that kind of can figure that stuff out is like, quote unquote, like the sound in their head. Like if you can have that riff in your head and play on the guitar and you recognize when you play, okay, this doesn't sound the way it sounds in my head, why not? And then you can start taking the process of adding all that production or like adding the drums or adding the bass and adding all these sound effects within that little 10-second riff to get closer to that sound in your head. Whereas I agree, like maybe back in the day, it was literally just like, oh, this riff is sick and that's it. You know what I mean? Whereas like these days, like it's almost like that's not enough. There has to be like another level, and it's constantly just like pushing artists to like, yeah, the riff is sick, but like what's happening around it, that's going to elevate that riff even more. Is it a sub drop? Is it like a riser? Like, you know what I mean? Just stuff like that, which I guess is like, again, a double-edged sword of, are we talking about music? Or are we talking about just like making things sound good, you know? But I'm so used to that now, and that's been my process for so long that I'm kind of just like, I'm very much the kind of person to be like, okay, well, that is the way it is, like, whatever, let's just stick with it and go with it. I'm not going to sit here and sulk over the good old days when I wasn't even alive to see it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, do you find when you're writing stuff, do you ever start the process anywhere other than the guitar, or does it just start on the guitar? Because I know for me it just starts on the guitar. Like every now and again I groove around on the bass, but like, well, the thing is I've got one bass which is this one, and it's like nowhere near as nice as my guitar that I play.
Right.
So it's always like a little bit less encouraging to pick up. But do you ever start elsewhere, or is it the guitar that always kind of starts things out?
Rarely, very ever. Like usually when I'm playing guitar, like I always, even if I just have a riff idea, like right now, if I have a riff in my head, I literally do, as I'm saying this, like I know what the drums are going to sound like to that riff. mostly because like most of the stuff I write is like pretty syncopated anyway, so it's going to sound like the guitar most of the time. But I think, yeah, like those two working together, it always starts on the guitar. I'm always picking up my guitar, starts with a riff, and then leads usually come after the fact. Like I'll have like almost like a whole song, and then I'm like, okay, like let's write a lead. Or sometimes like I'll have a melody. I'm like, okay, let's make this the motif of the entire song, this one melody that I've thought of, and let's just roll with it and see what happens. And then most of the time, it ends up just being in the song. That's another thing actually. Like I feel like, you know, you hear people talk about like riff graveyards and stuff like that. There's definitely a couple of riffs in the locker where I've like sat down, played them, written them, and I'm like, okay, this doesn't work. I'll leave it for a rainy day. But most of the time, if I start something and I want it to be finished, I'll just keep reworking it for months on end until it's finished. Yeah, I don't know why, but I figured that's a little bit different than some people, because I know some people is like, okay, this doesn't work. 10 seconds later, they just do another one and throw that one away. It's like, but like you had that one and you thought it was good 10 seconds ago. Like it might sound good in 6 months' time with something else. Like, yeah, I don't know.
I feel like there's a real lack of something I have some more like songwriting-y based students that I try to encourage them to work on developing ideas even if they don't really like them. I mean, if you don't like an idea, don't sit with it forever, but you know, there's probably something that if you sat with it for more than like 10, 20, 30 minutes, there's probably something there. Like you probably heard a melody or a rhythm or like just a thing that captured you in some way, and getting better at sort of excavating that thing, I think, is a skill that is maybe being neglected a bit. You know, I think it's so tempting, especially with how quickly you can now record music. I think it's so tempting just to throw stuff away. The amount of times I've spent like an hour recording a riff, and then I've kind of gone and like I've saved it, and then I've gone and like made some, or I've not saved it, I've just like had it sat on my laptop, and I go and like make some food or something, have a break, come back, listen to it, go meh, and I just delete it. Like that could have been, and it's not me. It's not me just being lazy. It's just like I kind of listen back and go like, like it was all right. But actually, there probably was something there, you know. And then trying to then cultivate that, I think, is an important step, because I think you can make a good song out of any idea. It just might take more refinement. Not any idea, you know, but like.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah.
We do. In terms of like, because a lot of the stuff that a lot of your music is quite sort of. I can certainly hear your influences in there, and there's some quite techie stuff, you know. I mean, it's the nature of like modern metal music, really, isn't it? What do you think it is that draws you personally? Like, is there anything about you on a personal level that you think draws you to music that is more technical? Like, do you find it more fulfilling to play that kind of stuff? Do you find it more like engaging, or is it just, are you an inquisitive person? Like, what kind of draws you to that?
I mean, like technicality has never been like the forefront of anything I write. I think I just want it to be a good song. That's always kind of like just to have that sense of like completedness, and to have it seem like I actually know what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like that's probably the most important thing. And if you listen to any of it, like you know straight away that like it's so like thematical and theatrical, and like there's motifs that pop up in every song and all that stuff. Like I really enjoy that in my own listening experience of bands like Periphery, Plenty, whatever. I'm sure you can hear those influences when you listen to the music. So having that in my music, I think that's the most. And as far as like what of myself draws me to that, I'm not entirely sure. I think I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so maybe just like me myself having the sense that it's, even though it's an instrument, this is a big aspect, even though it's an instrumental with no vocal, I feel as though that there's enough melody and enough motif in this song to make it feel complete as a song, rather than just like, here's 3.5 minutes of just like, I don't know, just a typical like 3-5-7 chord progression with me shredding over it. And then I'll bring it back one more time in the song. It's like, it has to be a little bit more for me to kind of justify it in my own work for it to be a release. Demo songs on YouTube and stuff is completely different. I'll just like write a riff, and if it fits, it fits. I'm like, cool, leave it. But if it's going to like, you know, live forever, so to speak, on like Spotify and whatever, yeah, I want it to be the best kind of representation of what I perceive to be as good songwriting, even though it might not resonate with some people.
Yeah, I feel like there's I went through a sort of I feel like I need to get back into the trying to write stuff for the sake of writing it, because like, so say you're doing these demos, and I've seen quite a few of them on your channel and just on your social medias and stuff. Like, I feel like I used to kind of feel like that could be a hindrance, thinking, oh, well, if you're writing for all these other things, does that not get in the way? And then I kind of can't, lately I can't help but think, like, that must be actually quite useful, because you're just constantly ticking over, you're just keeping the machine kind of moving. And I remember I used to see all these demos and think, like, oh, these guys must just have no time to write their own stuff. But I guess the whole point is it's actually helping. Well, this is kind of my assumption, I don't really do many of these kind of demo type things for anyone other than myself. So,
Yeah.
Do you find that process is helpful, the kind of demoing of stuff? Is it like, what's the word, multi-purpose in that sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like majority of my songs have started as a demo riff from a video that I thought was like, oh, okay, this could actually like be in a song. Because some of them are just like, I'll admit, like they're pretty throwaway. They're just like 15 seconds of just like some chord progression with a lead over it, which could be anything, I guess, when you put it like that. But then there's some where I'm like, no, okay, I actually really like this. The example I'm thinking of right now is my song Pulse. Like that end, like the last 2 minutes, that was from a video in 2019, 2018 or something like that. And I was like, one day this is going to be in a song. And then I was just like, funny story with that song, actually, because I sometime last year, I think it was between like May and June, Pliny, funnily enough, had 2 shows in 2 months. And the first show I met him for the first time, and the second show I was going to do a guitar chat with him, but it fell through. But we were just like chatting on the day, and I'm happy to say that we're now friends, which is cool. But that whole experience of like seeing his just do what he does twice in 2 months, I was like, man, if I'm going to like actually take a stab at this music thing, like I need to step it up, because like dudes like him exist. Do you know what I mean? So, and then like after that show, that it was the second show was him supporting North Lane, and I went home and I started writing, and I was like, okay, this riff I've always wanted to put into a song. Let's just do it. And like the first thing I wrote after that thing that was already written from 2019 was a solo, because I've just been watching Plenty. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, it's funny how those inspirations can come up. But yeah, I think with the demo writing, it's always good to constantly write, because then you can just whip it out for something and work it, as we were saying before, like just keep working and working. And if you like that idea at some point, for whatever reason, you will find something out of it, I think, is my experience. And it's funny, like if I go back and watch older videos, I can see where my influences start to change in terms of like how I write demo songs, and I can go back and I always have a point of reference to like where my levels were, 1 as a guitarist, 2 as a riff writer, 3 as like a production mixing standpoint. Because I go back on some of those older ones and go, oh my God, this sounds like shit. Can I swear?
Oh yeah, it's fine. Yeah. I've said all of the rudest words on here, so well, ones that won't get me cancelled, but like...
right. Yeah, I was like, man, this sounds like shit. But it's good, because obviously, like having that backlog of stuff you've just been writing for so long, it is literally just progress in front of your eyes. So, and it's kind of like reassuring to go, oh, okay, no, we're actually like doing something here. Because if I didn't have that, I'll probably be a bit unsure if I just haven't improved at all since I was like 18.
Yeah, it's hard to know sometimes until you look back at the like I kind of look at some of the I've got videos on my Instagram of me playing when I was like not that young, but like maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago. I'm like, whoa. Like now, especially now that I teach as well, I look at that, I'm like, oh, there's so much stuff I would have taught myself. Like,
yeah.
And that wasn't that, grand scheme of things. When I say 5 years ago, it's like it was it's like a noticeable change from then. You'd hope, but it's nice to kind of have that, seeing Instagram or your social media more as a journal than like a what's the word? Than like a sort of billboard, advertisement. I think there's something to be said for like seeing it as it depends. You got to, you're kind of running a business, right? So you got to you got to kind of balance that with you got to put stuff out that you think, okay, people are actually going to value this. But
that's true. Yeah.
How do you kind of judge the value of something? Like, you know, how do you decide what path to take as to like, oh, I'm going to do this video today, I'm going to write this kind of thing today? Like, how do you kind of prioritize your creation?
I should be way better at prioritizing, especially now that this is like a full-time thing. But I think I'm just I like structure. I like knowing what to do, when to do it, but I like doing it on my own terms. So it's like breaking my own rules. But like every day I know what I should be doing. And I feel like taking it day by day is like, makes me feel like I'm constantly doing something. You know, if it's for like a release or something, like for example, the new release, Arrhythmia, when was that? Friday. Like I have a plan of like what to do for the next 2 weeks regarding that release, because I feel like that's like super high priority. And if anything pops up, like if I get an email in my inbox saying, hey, there's this new plugin, can you do a demo video? I'm like, sure. And then I'll write out a script that day and kind of set a day aside to be like, okay, I'll film this day and edit that day. And like, I know what's happening, but I'm not really good at like setting it in stone, if that makes sense.
Or if you kind of know what you're, I feel like there's a lot to be said for just doing stuff. You know, if you just keep yourself busy and you just keep kind of just sort of churning through stuff, I think you can kind of you can overplan these things, can't you? And if you like you say, if you script it that day, it's like, well, how much more planning do you need to do beyond that? You know, you've put it together, and if you've done it on the day, it's like it's going to be sat there waiting to go. So it's not like
exactly right. Okay, and it will linger. It will linger on my conscience until it gets done. So usually it's either filming that day. I hate filming. I'm not going to lie. Like I don't hate it, but like I still can't talk in front of a camera after all these years. So like it's a really big like mental step to kind of, okay, today we are going to film. It's only going to take half an hour, but like then you got to sift through all the footage and like all your mistakes. I was like, oh my God, cut. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, it's definitely very free flow for sure.
Is it, when it comes to like the filming of stuff, do you do it quite like begrudgingly, like, oh great, I've got to go film this now? Or is it like, do you enjoy the whole process of what you're doing beyond just like the actual musical stuff?
I mean, I like knowing where it's going to go at the end of it. Like I like knowing what the end product is going to be. Filming, I don't mind so much once the camera's on. The thing I don't like is editing. Because it just takes so long, you know, like it just takes so long to edit. And you got to like these days, like with just YouTube and everything, like you can't just like cut up a video and paste it and throw it out. Like you got to add titles and sounds and animations and like all this stuff. And like, I'm not a video editor. Do you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where it's like, if you want to be a musician, you kind of just have to be a bit of everything to keep up. Because if you can't, then there'll be someone else that does it better and they'll be watching their video and not yours, which I guess is like a shitty way to think about it, but that is the reality. So, and I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in front of my eyes, like certain YouTubers who are doing one thing and then someone else came along and just completely just ran over them. And then they just stopped doing that thing. And yeah, so after like seeing it in front of my eyes, I'm like, okay, yeah, but I enjoy the whole process. I enjoy putting out anything knowing that it's going to create some sort of conversation around it. I read every single comment. I like knowing what people are thinking. I like when people interact with each other, because I feel like it's just like a little community building thing within like the modern metal world, so to speak. So anything that kind of pushes the conversation forward, anything that inspires or just makes people think, even if it's like a plug-in video and someone comments, oh, how did he do that? And then someone else comment, oh, he did this. And like before I get to see it. And I just think it's really cool that like the learning aspect of it all, which is I guess why most of the content I make is like educational in a way. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do you stay sort of motivated when you're, you know, obviously having to do the editing and all of that stuff, and then and also some, you know, when you're that sort of observant of all the comments and stuff that's happening online, you're somewhat at the mercy of any negative feedback you're getting as well. Like, how do you kind of keep yourself on track and like level-headed?
I mean, I guess like it just the kind of person who's like, it has to be done, let's do it kind of thing. Like if I hated doing it that much, I wouldn't. So like just being a big baby sometimes, like, fine, I guess I have to edit this video. You know, but like I don't care, you know what I mean? Like once it's out and once it's there, it completely overrides any sort of like negative connotation I would have in the process of making it. If it's a video that I'm genuinely like, I know that I'm going to enjoy doing, like, for example, like if it's like a plugin demo and I'm actually super stoked on the plugin, and these days I don't do anything unless I really want to. It's always been like that, but now that there's even less time because of like all the original music stuff and like actually trying to be a legitimate musician, like if there's an offer presented to me to do something, I won't do it unless I genuinely find use in that product or if I genuinely enjoy it. And like it's one of those things where like, you know, yes, company X did pay me to make this video, but they're not paying me to say good things. They're paying me for my reach. And I wish more people understood that, because that's literally the way that everything works on YouTube. Yeah, it's like, I'm not, the only reason why I'm saying good things is because I genuinely want to say good things. Like I'm not going to sit here and review a plugin that I just don't like and then force myself to say good things about it, because I just don't have the time anymore. It's not within my mental range to kind of put myself through that. Like I'd rather just do it on something that I enjoy and I know that I'm going to use. Yeah, that's pretty much how that goes, to be honest.
Yeah. When you're kind of I had definitely had a really good question, and this always happens whenever I'm talking. This I don't know, like if you get this when you're chatting to people, because I know you do. You kind of get more like guitar related stuff, where you're talking to someone and then you get a question. They say something and it make you sort of like you make a mental.
You think of another question.
Yeah, and then they say another thing. You're like, oh, well, I can't ask that question because that was that last thing. And then if you talk for more than like 30 seconds, there's going to be a few things that happen, and then all of a sudden at the end of it, you're like, really good. I had like 4 good questions, and now I have none. No, I do actually. Yeah. Funnily enough, and that was all me stalling because I now remember the question, which was like, so I noticed your audience seems to have. Well, it's from the outside in, it looks like it's kind of blown up a bit recently. But what's the kind of, I guess, what's your growth been like with your music and with your content just overall? Was it kind of like a grind in the early stages of it? But then,
sorry, what were you going to say, something?
I was just going to say, has your approach to sort of what you're creating, music and content, has that changed sort of in response to having a larger audience now?
I mean, it's funny that you say larger audience because I just don't feel that way at all. But I kind of feel like I was very fortunate and it was very timely for when everything happened, because I always, my good friend Joe Medeiros, do you know Joe?
I've had him on the podcast, yeah.
Oh yeah, you have too. That's right. Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah.
So we kind of started at the same time on YouTube, and it was the perfect storm because the big thing happened in 2020 that we won't speak of, right? And everyone was home, everyone was watching YouTube, views were up, content was up, and it was just the perfect time to start reviewing plugins because people are at home making music or like doing covers, because anyone that drops a new song in this like time is like, it's very ballsy to do so. So like anyone that can cover it is cool. Like I'll watch that. Do you know what I mean? So it's like all these little wheels and spokes like turning together, and it was a very quick kind of rise in followers and subscribers. Whereas now, I'm not sure if you'd agree, but like I feel like YouTube is feeling a little bit stagnant at the moment in terms of like how many views there are to go around. Because I watch people, like I still watch YouTube. I watch all my favorite guitar YouTubers and I love their content, and their content's getting better and they're making better videos and they're doing bigger and better things, but the views just aren't the same as they were 2-3 years ago. Which when you talk about like the quick rising growth lately, like I guess so, but at the same time, like, what is there to, like, something has to give kind of thing. And I think that's why it's important for people to recognize that it's not really about like the follow account or the subscribe account or whatever. That's why I value, like, as I said before, like putting out the content and watching the conversations that come out of it. Like, that's what gives me the fulfillment of doing it. Not so much like the numbers, because I get people coming up to me all the time. It's like, oh, like you got X, Y, and Z, and like that must be so cool. And like it's amazing. I'm so grateful for all of that. But you know, and the reality is that this could all go away tomorrow. And I would rather sit here knowing that my content or my music or my whatever resonated with someone on a deeper level, as opposed to just kind of, you know, this throwaway kind of virality that everyone seems to be chasing at the moment. Like, I'm sure there's a million viral ideas that I or anyone else could do to kind of go viral. Like, I've had this idea to kind of like get a Fender Telecaster body. I've got this Fender, oh, it's not with me, it's on my drummer's house. I got this like custom telly with like a Warmoth neck, and I always wanted it to look kind of relic. And I was like, I wonder if like I just unbolted the body and took out the electronics and then just like tied it to the back of my car and went for a drive and filmed it. Like, I wonder if that would go viral. And it probably would, right? But like, yeah, it might go viral for a week, but then like, what do you gain from it? Just a lot of angry comments and people that don't like you. And then you're forever known as the telly car guy. You know, you're not known for your music or for the way that you, like, oh, what's the word? Oh, I got a massive mental blank. Not inspire, but like the way that people kind of view you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, you kind of get known for you or what you want to be known for, essentially. Like whatever, you know, rather than just like whatever's kind of working this week. Which
exactly right. Because you could do that if you really wanted to. Like, I always think about this comment I did this video. Like, there's sometimes I'll dabble into it, and every time I go, okay, this is going to go viral, it does. And I'm like, well, now I'm just upset because this is like the most low quality piece of shit content I've ever made in my life. And now it's sitting here at 5 million views on Instagram and like 100,000 likes. I'm like, I spent so long doing this other stuff. It just doesn't. And like, it was this video of like, what your guitar says about you, and obviously it was a joke. I don't know if you've seen it, but
I think I've seen the one. I've seen there's been kind of, you know, like I'll see one video and then I'll just see it like reshared somewhere else. You know, like some of the
Like, it's like there's been a couple now. Like the first one was just like Tellys and Strats and Gibsons, and again that was very intentional because it's not modern metal. It's much wider than that. So like, it's obviously going to reach a wider audience. And then I did like a modern metal edition, which got nowhere near as much engagement, which is obvious, right? Because it's such a small niche. But then you get all these angry comments of like, I won't lie, like dudes in their late 50s going like, oh, like, what do you know? Blah, 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 blah. It was like, here's what this piece of content says about you. And I was like, mate, if I was trying to sell it, I wouldn't have time to reply to this stupid fucking comment. Like, I would be doing something else. But yeah, no, it's funny that you mentioned that, the whole kind of the cause of all that stuff and how we view it, I guess.
Yeah, I know with this podcast, I kind of, you know, there's always the temptation to, I don't know, whenever I make like little reels or something, or just with the nature of the conversations, I just want to have conversations with people about real shit, I guess. But there's not as immediately, there's, you know, I don't think either of us has said anything in this podcast that's immediately like, like viral kind of clickbaity, you know, that I'd have to really chop this up to make some really contrived thing. You know what I mean? So, and it's the nature of like 90% of the podcasts I do. Every now and again, there's a moment where it's like, I know that's going to be like, it's normally like a funny, if, you know, like just had the most like not safe for work jokes with Jason from Ingested. I was just genuinely in tears laughing. I was like, I didn't actually end up making a clip of it because I was like, I can't. All right. Like they're shareable. Like, you know, it's just. I'm not gonna make a reel out of this. I would just, and he probably wouldn't share. I wouldn't share it if someone made that.
Fair
you can go
enough,
back and listen. It's funny, but yeah, like the nature of the podcast is, I obviously I could be tempted, and sometimes am, to ask questions that I think maybe that get like a, you know, some sort of like reel worthy, like TikTok worthy answer, you know. But then I just think that's not really where the substance is, and I'd rather just ask good questions, and then
Yeah,
you know, and then hopefully
exactly
the
right.
audience I get will, you know, it's slower growth, but hopefully in the audience I get will be, you know, like somewhat, that will hopefully will reflect what I'm trying to do, you know.
That reminds me of something. I'm going to circle back before I forget it. When
Yeah.
you were saying how like how I've kind of it, because you were saying like the slow, steady growth that you've got on this podcast, and circling back to that question that you asked before of like, okay, well, like your kind of thoughts on the followers and how that's all come to be to this point in time, that you just put it perfect. I think it's way better to do it slow and to do it with content, with substance that genuinely gets like-minded people around your page or like your work. Because again, as we were saying, if you just go for that viral clip, like, I'm sure you could get anyone on here and just like, I'm not thinking of anyone, but like you could just like question them on their allegations or something and just make a clip of it, and then like it just goes viral because like, oh my god, I can't believe you asked that. You know what I mean? But like you're not going to do that because you'd rather have conversations with substance. You'd rather have content that is genuinely interesting on a deeper level. And I've always viewed that the same with how I do it. It's always slow and steady wins the race, because I can sit here and even though like, you know, I don't even know how many followers we're at anywhere, but I think it's in the 30s on Instagram. But like I might look at someone that has like 250. I'm like, man, like I wonder what they're doing different. And I look at it and I'm like, this is amazing playing, this is amazing work. But you know, I think that like with what I've built up until this point, it is very slow and steady. Oh God, I was going to say something, I completely forgot it. But do you understand where I'm coming from? Like, I feel like it's much easier to kind of say in terms of engagement, like I know that my 30,000 or whatever is way more engaged than perhaps someone else's like 250 plus. And that's because, you know, you build this kind of personal connection with the viewers through YouTube videos, through even them getting the opportunity to kind of like watch podcasts like this, where it might be seeing me on a deeper level that people just don't. Because I feel like some people just kind of view people in the internet. I'm sure it happens with you too, where it's like, oh, this is just a person. Like they won't like clock the fact that I didn't know how to set up my mic and I would have been around my room and like, you know, like I eat and I sleep and I drink water and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, so having that kind of intimate connection with that smaller amount of people and building that up over time, you will see the benefits of it later. And it will be it's kind of like you won't just go down as quickly as you came up. It will be like a steady rise and you just stay there for a longer amount of time. I think that's the way it should be done anyway. And that's from everything I've observed and from all the people that I look up to and all my influences and the people that I can now call friends. Like it's how they've done it and it's how I want to model myself in terms of all that stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, how do you see yourself kind of going forward with what you're doing? Like, do you have a kind of a roadmap, you know, of, okay, maybe next year I'm going to try and do a bit more of this, a bit more of that, a bit less of something else? Do you have like a roadmap in mind?
I mean, roadmap is not so much. Like, I know what I want to do. Like, now that we're doing this, like actually playing shows thing, like I'm booked under Destroy All Lines, which is like the same touring agency that does like Parkway Drive and Polaris and all that stuff. So they're working with me. They're trying to get shows. I look at people who I've looked up to for years, guys like Pliny, guys like even like Jakub Żetecki, if you've heard of him, obviously Periphery, and how they've done it and where they started. And ideally, like I've always said this to anyone, like I just want music to be it. You know what I mean? That's no matter how it is, if it's through YouTube, it's through actually playing shows and doing music. I just want music to be what I do. I have a degree. It's sitting there. I finished it last year. Like I don't want to need to use it if I don't have to, kind of thing. It was very much like all of this started kicking off like halfway into that. I was like, okay, well, like I didn't think this would ever be a possibility. So I'll finish this and at least then I'll have that kind of there if I need it for a rainy day. But it's just sitting here at the moment because things are going relatively okay. So it's just kind of like, again, that slow, steady, like keeping the ball rolling, keeping that like, it's like an avalanche snowball, just like rolling around, getting bigger and bigger. Like plans for next year, like I can sit here and say like, okay, like in terms of like original music, like have another single out by the end of the year, do a couple more national, like have my first and do a couple national tours around Australia as like an opener for someone else, build up that base to then do a headline run early next year with an EP, like all these things, all these like little plans that are not really set in stone, but it's like kind of a good, again, as you said, like a roadmap to work towards something, if that makes sense. And I feel like if you play all those cards right and you do it now, and I'm fortunate enough to have people around me who have done it with other people and do it for a living and kind of can see where the trajectory of everything's going. Because I think it's a little bit of a unique kind of situation, especially for like my booking agent and Destroyer Alliance and stuff like that, where it's like they're so used to taking on new artists who literally just are just starting a band and they're literally building them up from ground zero. Whereas like they picked me up when there was already like a prominent kind of social following, and it's like, okay, like what do we do with this kind of thing? Which I guess is like a cool opportunity to kind of like, I'm so grateful. Like I get to do all these things and like kind of skip all these steps that other people need to take, I guess, purely because I don't know, there's like a follow account next to my name. Do you know what I mean? But like, and it might open up opportunities sooner rather than later that shouldn't be happening that soon. So it's kind of forced me to kind of to just go straight into it without thinking. Like, for example, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but like, I put out this video where like I dropped my first EP February 2022, and then I was like, okay, well, let's just do a live show. And then I filmed the whole thing and put it on YouTube. And I got comments like, oh, this isn't your first live show, blah, blah, blah. Because there was like a screen and lights and like all this production and like we got a rack made. Like there was like MIDI changes happening. Like it was like, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, like, and because there's a certain expectation because people view my brand as like, knowing what I'm doing, then I guess I kind of need to go all out here. I don't really have a choice. But then in saying that, I probably wouldn't have been picked up by Destroyer Alliance if that video was never put out. So yeah, in terms of like trajectory, it's kind of like there's no real, like there is a roadmap, but again, I want to do it on my own terms and kind of just take it day by day and slowly work towards that. Like new single out by the end of the year, sure. Like I'm sure sometime the next week I'll just be slowly writing a new song, and I have ideas like, oh, maybe we'll get a vocalist this time, and I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, it's very much just kind of take it as it comes.
Yeah. It's do you think like this kind of interesting hearing? Because I know when with my old band, we definitely made the mistake of, I don't know if it's a mistake. It's something you kind of have to learn, I think, or not everyone has to, but of like looking like a local band. Just looking like, not, I don't just mean aesthetically, but I mean like in your shows, in your online presence. We never put out any music that wasn't like professional grade, production and everything. But so, and but there are a good few bands I know where I'm like, you just need to record your songs properly, or you just need to do X, Y, and Z properly. Like, they'll have like great songs, but then you hear the production, you're like, oh, that's a bit like, you really should have instead of recording a 10-song album, you should have recorded a 2-song release that sounded epic, or instead of playing all these shows to like 10 or 15 people, you should have waited and put on a big headliner or something, we kind of made that mistake a few times of like taking gigs that just didn't really do anything for us, where
okay.
And I feel like that, back in the day would have been the way to do it, before social media. You've literally just got to get in front of people.
Whereas now you can get in front of millions of people and not leave your bedroom.
Yeah.
So
and don't get me wrong, like the gigs were fun. We did some fun gigs. Like even the crappy ones at like, like tiny town bars and stuff, but it probably didn't do us many favors for like anyone that does go across our Instagram, for example, and sees that we're playing some like tiny bar to like 10 people. They're not going to think, oh, that's a legit band. They're just going to think, oh, it's just a group of people, making some music. They won't necessarily think,
it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah.
Go on.
I was going to say, I'm very conscious of that And I get like more so than I guess maybe the average person would be, because again, there is that like following. So if I like start saying, oh yeah, I'm playing shows, and then like I'm playing a show every week and it's like just in some dive bar to like 10 people, it's like, this doesn't really look legit. You know what I mean? So like I'm like super selective of what we take now. And because my bassist Keyan, and he's in a band himself, and he knows like all that stuff, and he's gone through it, and he's like, okay, like I don't think we should do this, or maybe this isn't the best thing to do, because it will kind of be viewed as a step backwards. And I guess like these days, like especially with social media, it's like everything is on display, and like there's some sort of level of like unbridled perfectionism to everything that you must do. You know what I mean? Like it has to be perfect. Like for example, like I won't say who, but I'm sure you could guess. There's a very big instrumental band coming to town in 2 weeks, and like the biggest, and we're really hoping that we get the support for that. And it's at the moment, I'm not percentage wise, I don't know how likely it's looking. I know that we're being pushed very hard for it, but in the back of my mind, as amazing as an opportunity that would be, when you kind of step up to that level, it would be very hard after that to do anything without it looking like a step down. So it's navigating that space, which I'm completely new to, because for the longest time, it's just been me in my room. But now like being thrown in the deep end of like doing shows and traveling and getting the rig and the racks and the files ready for shows and all that stuff, like, like it's just, it's a bit full. It's almost like a full-time job at that point doing that stuff. But yeah, no, I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of like, I guess like in a way, like protecting your brand, and how it's perceived by people through social media, because again, like everyone's social media is so curated, so perfect. Like all the videos I post, it probably takes me more than 10 takes to nail that part down properly. Sometimes it takes me one, sometimes it takes me 50. Do you know what I mean? Like, but then when people watch it, they just assume that it didn't take me that long at all, when the reality is that it did. So, yeah, I guess this is something to be said for like that whole social media perfectionism aspect. I know we touched on that a lot in this podcast, but I feel like it's very fitting because it is so true.
Yeah, I think it's hard to it's kind of hard to avoid. I almost hate talking about it, and like for fear of like sort of perpetuating the whole thing. But yeah, like it is I think it's something. I think as long as you're honest about, not you, but like everyone is honest about their process. It's when people become sort of deceitful in their kind of
like guitar pros on stage.
Yeah, like you hear certain. I've seen. I was chatting to, was it who? It might have been Nick Nocturnal a couple episodes ago, and I was saying about how I find it. I've seen a lot of vocalists lately, even some quite notable ones, auto-tuning stuff to the point where it's like the average person I don't think would clock it, but it's to the point where I'm like, because you know when you can hear a note, it's just too
dead on.
But yeah, but it's too dead on. But because of the tone of it, that they weren't that close. Because like it sounds unnatural. Like if you're really
sounds
close,
warbled. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're close to the note, there's less happening to get you on there. So even with a bit of auto-tune, it's not going to sound that unnatural. Whereas if you're quite far away, the auto, it starts to sound like Kanye, It
starts to mangle it a little bit. It's like detuning, like with a pedal or like with a plugin. Like you can do it a couple notches, but if you go to like -6, -7, like you hear it because it's processing it more. Like
and I've heard a few quite notable vocalists who I'm like, I know you can just hear it in the slides and and I'm like, I have a little bit of a problem because I feel I'm not normally like nitpicky like this, but I was like, I feel like there's going to be a lot of people listening to that thinking, oh shit, I'm not that good, when they don't know that it's auto-tuned. The fact it's auto-tuned doesn't bother me. It's just like, it's to the point where I'm like, I see all these comments
because they think they can get away with it.
Yeah, I think so. And it's not me trying to sound all, I hate the fact that I'm probably sounding quite like just bitchy basically, but it's not that. It's just, I think I'm all too aware of seeing this sort of perfected thing, and then if it's there, if you know what you're going to do, you're not going to put a disclaimer at the bottom of all your videos. But like, whenever I read the comments, I'm like, surely someone has noticed this, you know. And I'll read, and there might be like one comment that's saying auto-tuned, and everyone's having a go at them. Like, and yeah, to be fair, the comment's probably a bit of a dick kind of comment, but
yeah.
Like, not many people seem to notice it, which I kind of.
I think like it depends on the intent. Like if it's just like a general, just like pop punk band or something like that, where most of their listeners aren't really musically inclined, it's like, whatever, man. If it makes people happy, sure. But if it's like a tech death metal fucking like everyone that listens to it plays an instrument, do you know what I mean? And it's like everyone can tell, then yeah, I feel like you shouldn't be dialing it in that hard, because you're not getting away with it. People can, because I guess if it makes people happy, it makes people happy. Do you know what I mean? But like when the genre is catered towards people that are so critical of like absolutely everything, which I found out the hard way. Like I just got done for a playthrough I did because the guitar wasn't plugged in. I'm like, oh my God. Like,
is it, but that was for like the music video for your song, right? Like, I mean, yeah, I recorded a music video in a field. Like, obviously I wasn't plugged in. Like,
and it boggles my, sorry, I'm going to go on a tangent at the moment. I'm going to have a bit of a rant, because it boggles my mind that people are so like upset when they don't see a cable plugged in. Like, I'll say it right now, like 99% of the guitar playthroughs on YouTube are literally just the track. Like, and the fact that the guitar is plugged in doesn't mean they're actually playing it. If your ears can't tell that that is the original track, but your brain perceives it to then be playing over it because it's plugged in, like, there's no helping you. I'm sorry. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, playing in the middle of a field, playing in a room, like if I plugged a cable in, no one would have said anything. Doesn't mean I'm playing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's weird. I don't get it. Like I'm playing it, like I'm playing it note for note. You can literally see me. If you were to slow down that video and play the frets that I play, like you will play the song. So what's the difference? Do you know what I mean? Like if you come to a show, I'll play it live in front of you. I don't know. Like, and so anyone else that has a playthrough video on YouTube, like you watch it, excuse me, I've always seen like playthrough videos to kind of be like, to watch what their hands are doing. That's the way I've always kind of, because why else would you call it a guitar playthrough? You would just call it, I don't know, it's like a music video at that point. It's different when it's a cover. If I put like, oh, I'm covering my own song, but I'm just playing to the track, like that's different. Or like if you were doing a cover of someone else's song and like you just played over their song, like sure, that doesn't make sense. If it's a playthrough and you spent all that time recording and you've played it live and you've done all this stuff and you're literally playing it note for note in the video, like, why does it matter if a cable's plugged in or not? Like, you're not hearing it anyway. But even if it was recorded, it'd be getting EQ'd, comped, mangled to the producer's content to kind of make it sound as good as it can. Like, it's not a true representation of whatever would have been recorded. You know, why do you think I'm jumping from leads to rhythms in half a second? Like, am I setting up MIDI switching for this one playthrough in this room with no power? Like, no, like, or in the forest? Like, I don't know. It boggles me a little bit.
Yeah, I think people just pick up on whatever they can. Like, there's one, I've said it a few times now. There's one that always makes me laugh, and I've had it a few times, where I'll put up like a reel or something, or a YouTube short or whatever. Weirdly, it's more on YouTube Shorts. I don't know why, but people comment like, "I don't even know who you are." You're like, wait. What do you expect?
I hate that
like,
comment so like, much.
Do you want to just know everyone that you scroll past on YouTube? Like,
it's
I just
sorry, you go.
No, it's just the one. That's what it just makes me laugh, because I genuinely, I'm just like, what do you expect? Like, I don't know what these people are scrolling for. Like, I don't know what are they just hoping to only see just like their friends and like famous people.
It's so egotistical and narcissistic to say that comment, because it's basically saying, well, if I don't know you, then who gives a fucking shit who you are, kind of thing. It's like, what, like, you are not like God. Like, who are you to say, like, oh, if I don't know you, then who gives a shit? Do you know what I mean? It's such a weird comment to say. And especially it's rampant on Facebook comments. Like, if you see some like clickbait article of like, oh, like, blah, 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 does this. And then you hit the comment, it's just like some 50-year-old dude like, I don't know who you are. You know what I mean? It's like, well, you still clicking on the article. You're giving them what they want. You're giving them the ad revenue. Like, they're winning at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? And like, people just don't. I could talk about stupid comments all day. Like, I got one the other day. It was like, oh, not really feeling the Matrix get up. And I'm like, okay, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's fine. Like, but it's such a weird thing to say, like,
Yeah.
on their own volition. That's what boggles me. It's not a weird thing to say, but just to like go through the process to actually put it out there, that's what I think is a little bit weird.
Yeah, there's one I'm going to read it. There's one I got literally, where is it? I got it literally like yesterday. It was so I put out a this is such a I put out my old band, we did a it was Trivium's album launch. They did like an event in the UK here, and we did like this acoustic gig, and it was very late notice. We had like a week to prepare, like basically acoustify our whole metal set and learn a couple of Trivium songs as well. And I put up a couple of the covers of these Trivium songs that we did.
Here we go.
And the song was in E flat, right? I think it's in E flat tuning, or it might have been. Yeah, it would.
Like E flat standard.
Yeah, I can't remember, or if it would have been 7-string, but so like A flat, B flat even. I can't remember. Either way, I think that's the tuning.
B flat standard. Yeah.
Yeah, and the guy said, "I hate to be the nitpicky guy, but I don't like the E flat tuning to her voice. I can hear she's singing above E flat, and it bothers me. She's an alto, blah, blah." And I'm like, and I just replied, and I was just like, we had a week to prepare it. Among all the other songs, I had to literally rewrite our whole set list as an acoustic set in a week because we didn't have acoustic versions of our heavy metal songs.
Yeah.
And I also had the guitar tuned to a particular tuning that could kind of do all of the songs with minimal messing around between songs. There's a number of reasons why, like, we just
and people would never know
it's
that because
perfect.
they've just clicked a video and watched it. Like, they have no idea of any of the context behind it.
Yeah, and I said this, and then the next comment he just went, "I had live gigs and I dealt with the same." I'm like, fuck off then. I don't like.
So you just know it's some geezer. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I read it. I was just like, why? Like, and I just said, well done, you're smarter than me, and I just left it at that.
That was it. Yeah, and sometimes it's better not to feed the machine. Like sometimes, like literally it happened the other day. I was so like, this is probably the dumbest. I've been like abused. I've been like racially profiled, like this, but this is the dumbest comment I've ever gotten ever. And I replied to it and it got deleted 2 minutes after I replied to it because the guy realized how stupid it was. It was on the newest song. And you know what? I've got a screenshot of it because I screenshotted it and sent it into the band chat. And then when I went to check it again, when I went to like refresh my YouTube comments because it would have been up the top, it just wasn't there. I'm like, it's been deleted. Hang on, let me get it up because it was the dumbest thing I've ever read in my life. And it just goes to show that this, like, I guess this whole conversation is trying to say, like, there's just no helping some sort of like certain people, like just the way they think, like you're never going to be able to please everyone. So you might as well just kind of do whatever it is that makes you happy or feel fulfilled from an artistic standpoint. But okay, the comment was, so this was on the latest song of that playthrough with the guitar that wasn't plugged in. And it was, people too caught up to see this is just another Jackson Pro demo. The problem when you write a demo for every video you do is that you will just be a demo guy when even your music ends up just sounding like the hours of demos you previously released. Good though. And I was like,
good though.
this, and then in my head, I'm like, literally every song to ever exist ever was a demo at some point. Do you know what I mean? And like, that makes no sense. Like, what is he trying to say? That the music that I write sounds like the music that I write? Like, I didn't get it. And so then I replied basically saying that. And then I said, I'm not sure what you're trying to say, but all that matters is that you tried your best. And then he deleted it. So and there wasn't a Jackson Pro in the video. It's like nothing that he said made sense to me. And I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever read. It's like he wants to have a dig for whatever reason. I don't know what that would stem from, but like, yeah, I guess this is proving that there's no pleasing everyone. And I think my toxic trait is that, I'll get all these comments saying like, oh my God, this is so sick. Like, I love this. I love that. And like I read through every single one and I'll reply and be like, oh, thank you so much. Cause I'm like so grateful that people are taking the time to watch this video. But then it's just that one shit comment out of like 100 good ones that would just set off my mood and just put me in the shittest mood for the next like hour or something. Are you like that as well?
I'm not too bad. Sometimes I've not had that many like really shitty ones. I've had a few where people just, I think the ones that annoy me are the ones that just don't make any sense, like that guy's one. It's like,
Yeah.
it just literally, and he was complaining about like the tuning, and I'm just like, it just doesn't, it kind of almost annoys me just because he's wrong. It's just like, it just doesn't,
Yeah.
it's not, I mean, he might be right. Maybe it would have been better if if I tuned the guitar just to E standard. And I'm not being funny, a semitone is not going to make a difference as to whether she sounds like shit or really good singing over that song. Like it's not, that's not gonna, I couldn't be asked to get into that. But yeah, so I mean, rather than end on complaining at the world, I was going to ask what you thought, kind of where you think maybe, obviously metal is kind of, there's always something new, you know, there's always like a new technique or a new sound or a new kind of way of doing something popping up. It seems like every other week. What do you think are what do you think is maybe like the direction that metal is going? Are there any trends that you think, are there some you think are going to stay, some you think are going to go, some that are good, bad, you know?
That's a great question. I have thought about this actually, like a little bit. I was like, okay, where are we going from here? Because like the way I kind of view metal as a whole was like, okay, it was like Sabbath and stuff in the 60s, and then like it kind of progressed into like metal and then like thrash with like Metallica, and then kind of got into like that hardcore and then like metalcore and then like gent in like 2010s. And at this point it's 2023, and it kind of crossed that thing of like now going like that North Lane route where there's like a lot of electronic influence in it, which you hear all over metal tracks these days, which is what I guess categorizes quote unquote modern metal, and why some of the old heads hate it so much because, it's not just the drums and guitar and bass, it's got other things in it and I don't like it. You know what I mean? It's like, but in terms of where it's going to go after that, I'm not sure, to be honest. I think that like electronic wave, we're in the middle of it right now and it's slowly starting to peak off. What I think the next thing is going to be, I think there's going to be a return to a more raw, kind of more organic production style. That's what I'm getting, because I think progressive metal in particular is very at the forefront of like determining what is going to be the next thing. It's like, okay, well, like Meshuggah in like 2002, and then 10 years later, everyone's doing what they're doing and they're still doing it. And when I think it, because I came across this epiphany the other day, when I told like people ask me like, oh, what do you listen to? I'm like, oh, like metalcore, like stuff like that. And then in my head, metalcore is like, oh, like Loathe and like Thornhill and Sleep Token and Periphery and all that stuff and Error. But then to like, I completely forget about like big metalcore, like Bad Omens and I Prevail or Motionless and One. I was like, oh no, I actually don't listen to any of that stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with it, I just don't listen to it. And I feel like that stuff at the moment, like that, like 3 million monthly listener plus metalcore on Spotify is like very much like really pushing that agenda of like super electronic, super overproduced, genty riffs, all that stuff. Whereas like if I listen to any of the bands that were kind of paving the way for that even to happen in the first place, like Periphery or Animals as Leaders, or even techie guitar guys like Jacob Satecki, the Polish. Do you know Jacob Satecki?
I know the name, yeah.
Yeah, so seeing what they're doing now, it's almost like they're going backwards. Like I bought the stems for Periphery's latest record, and I'm listening to them like going, wow, like there's like not mistakes, but like this would have not flown in like P2 or P3. Like they would have cut this or edited this, and like this sounds raw, and this sounds like it's like they're not striving for perfection. And then when you listen to Animals as Leaders' new record, it's very much has its own vibe. It's not like maybe I forget the name, the red album cover one, Joy of Motion.
Mean, yeah.
Yeah, like that's like very
the one with the funny times,
like,
isn't it?
Yeah, like it seems very perfect, but now it seems like they're going back and they're trying to not leave mistakes in, but just kind of sound a bit rougher and kind of go like this almost like hardcore route where there's like feedback and it doesn't sound perfect, and it's more about capturing the emotion rather than like the technicality and like the songwriting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I heard a student of mine showed me a Nine Inch Nails track. I won't play it, but I'm sure I could find the name. And at the end of it, it's so raw and it's amazing. It's this like what is it called? I found the album. It is called. I can't remember. I found the album, but I can't remember which one of them it is. Oh,
yeah,
The Hand That Feeds. Is that it? I think.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know. That's just the one I've saved off this album. Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
But anyway, the end of the track, someone listening might be able to point this out. It goes to like room mic vocals.
That's cool.
And it's really out of, like, the pitching is really off. Like, it's not singing accurately. And it's just really depressing, frankly. But it's amazing because it's just like, it's just so new, you know, and like it sounds new. I mean, the album's from like 2005, but it just, you hear it. I remember distinctly mentally, it's not many times in songs where I mentally sort of like really switch on, like, whoa, what was that? You know, not just like, oh, that was a cool riff, but like, oh, I've not heard something like this, you know, at all in any other song. And it was one of them. I was like, whoa, I need to So anyway, well, I need to go to bed soon because of our time difference. It's nearly 1 a.m. for me.
Oh damn! I didn't realize it was that late.
No, it's all good, man. I can do it. I can power through. Because obviously it's kind of like just like morning. Was it like early mid morning for you, isn't it? And it's like
right now we started at 8, so it's 9:17 a.m. right now.
What throws me is how you're like. So what you're 9, you're 8.5 hours ahead. That's such a weird time. I know it's a time signature. It's a weird time difference.
It is. It's like that's why I post so late at night here, because everyone in America is just starting to wake up. So cool. So if we could get a question to start the next podcast, as you heard from yours, it can be whatever you want. It doesn't have to be musical if you don't want it to be. And an artist you'd like to recommend to the world as well. Sure. Question. Oh, it's a good one. Oh God, I'm hitting a blank here. I said I'll just come up with it on the spot.
Just say words until a question happens.
That's a good one. It's like, what makes you feel fulfilled in songwriting?
Cool.
There you go.
Nice. I will make sure to pass on and report back. I don't know. I literally don't know who the next one is going to go to because my schedule. Well, there's someone that it could be going to, but I suspect there'll be one before that. So, So yeah. And an artist that you want to promote. Yeah.
So I tell this to everyone. And I listened to them, and then I saw them live, and I genuinely could not believe what I was hearing. And I felt like it was like a very movie moment of like, you know, when like a manager standing there, someone's recording in a studio in a movie, and it's like, yeah, this kid's got it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like that. And not that I'm to say, but like, that's what it felt like watching. I felt like I was like discovering it. It's like, oh my God, like this is definitely going somewhere soon. It's this band called Inertia, INERTIA, from Sydney. And they came and played a show here, and I listened to some of their stuff. I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. And then I watched them live, and I was like, oh my God, this band is one of the best sounding live bands I've ever heard. And they sound exactly like the record. The tones, the production is completely like outstanding. Their stage presence is unbelievable. I felt like I shouldn't be there. I felt like there should be way more people there. And then I found out that everything that happens within that band is completely in-house because of the guitarist is a producer, mixer, engineer. And I was like, oh my God, like these guys have to be doing something more and they will. Because their stuff is really inspiring to listen to. And it's like, I'm definitely taking cues from it for my next releases for sure. And everyone I talk to about them is like, oh dude, have you heard of Inertia? And then straight away their eyes open. They're like, dude, I'm like, I know, like everyone's on the same page. It's kind of like this little secret at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. But yeah, Inertia is awesome.
Nice one. Yeah, I think my closest, I saw Sleep Token. It's so mad. I saw them about, and actually, I think someone else has recommended Inertia before. Which this is cool. I mean, this is a cool thing. Don't worry. Like, but I think this is the first time I've actually had an artist repeated as like a recommendation, which is obviously a good thing. Like, shows are doing something right. But yeah, I remember seeing Sleep Token probably a couple of years ago now, and they played to maybe like 800 people. I don't know if it was sold out. I don't think they sold it out. Maybe they did. And then like a couple months ago, they sold out a 3,000 cap venue literally just down the road, and it's like, to do that in like 2 years, it's absolutely crazy.
It's nuts. Yeah. Like they're coming here in May, and they sold out every venue, and every venue is like 1,000 plus in Australia, and they sold it out in like 3 days.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
no supports, no upgrading venues, no adding other shows. Just that's it. So I'm sure they'll be having a support with them, but no one knows who it's going to be. But yeah, it's very cool to see their rise, because I've been listening to them since Jaws came out. You know what I mean? Like, and now whatever's happening is happening. Can't wait for the album. But yeah,
sick, cool. Is there anything? Well, I know you've got something you want to promote for yourself to finish up.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Number one. It's very cool. I've seen like the clips going around on Instagram and stuff like that of all these people that I respect and look up to. So it's cool for me to be on here as well. Shameless self-plug. I have a song called Arrhythmia that just came out on Friday. It's Monday right now for anyone watching. For me, I guess it's technically Monday for you as well, because we've ticked over midnight.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Arrhythmia, stream it, watch it, do all the things. You guys already know what to do if you're watching this. But yeah, thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank you.